You've made these mistakes, I've made these mistakes, but it's okay. We're gonna learn and become a better builder. What's up, Domino community? My name is Lily Hevish, and today I will be sharing 5 more mistakes that Domino builders make and how you can fix them. This is part 2 of my series. If you haven't seen part 1, definitely check it out over here first. I got such a great response from this with so many comments of people relating to the mistakes that they've made when building dominoes. So I wanted to share 5 more tips and ways that you can improve your builds. And I want to preface this video by saying it is okay if you've made these mistakes. We are all learning, and I think being able to point out the mistakes and things that you do wrong is something that's going to help you become a better builder. And without further ado, here are 5 mistakes that domino builders make and how you can fix them. Number 1, you haven't tested your domino tricks enough. I cannot stress how important it is to test your tricks over and over and make sure that you are comfortable with that trick and know that it will be reliable before putting it in a big setup. Every time I try something new, whether I'm learning a new type of wall or a specialty trick, I will do a couple of tests just to the side of my project and see how it falls. Sometimes I'll take a video of it in slow motion so I can see it back in a really detailed manner and see exactly where the dominoes are falling and hitting the next one. And if something's off, I'll know how to fix it by changing the angles or the spacing or just being really curious about the trick so that I can figure out how to make it a little bit more reliable. I know that some builders have their own internal rulebook for testing things, like if it works 5 times in a row then it's good, they feel comfortable, or sometimes that's 10 times in a row. You can figure that out for yourself, whatever works best, but make sure you do a lot of tests, and then once you feel really good about it, make it in your big project. You do not want to risk not testing your tricks and having something fail after spending days or even weeks building a project. I guarantee that. It might take a little extra time to test your tricks really thoroughly, but I guarantee that amount of time will be worth it. You'll have that knowledge to build on more tricks in the future, and you save time because now your setup will actually work and you don't have to rebuild the entire thing. So long story short, make sure to test your tricks. Number 2, you aren't using enough barriers. Now when I say barriers, I mean something to place in between your domino tricks so that if something falls over and spreads out, it's not going to hit another domino trick that's next to it by accident. There are a lot of times where you might have a domino wall fall and then this pile of dominoes is just bouncing everywhere and it knocks down something early, which can really be a mess and knock it down in the opposite direction when you don't want it to. It's really important that when you build your domino setup, you're thinking about how everything is going to fall and where every domino is going to land so that it doesn't knock over other things around it by accident. If you do see something that could be risky, for example, a curve that's really sharp and there's a line next to it, or a domino wall falling that's really close to another domino line next to it, make sure you put a barrier there. You can use pretty much anything as a barrier as long as it stays standing and it's tall enough that a domino isn't really going to fall over it if something is bouncing. So for example, you could use a field starter as a barrier. This sits perfectly flat and you can just tape it down with double-sided tape. I recommend always taping down your barriers because there's always a chance that the dominoes could knock over the barrier, which could then hit more dominoes by accident. If you just need a small barrier for a domino line, for example, you could even use another domino as a barrier, put it horizontally and tape that down as well, or even a template. This works perfectly as a barrier as well. It just stands on its side and it's a much longer thing than a domino. But when in doubt, use more barriers than you think you need. There's always a chance that dominoes could bounce in different directions that you don't expect, so make sure that barrier is long enough and tall enough and secured down and as close to the thing that you're trying to block as possible. So for example, I wouldn't put this barrier directly in the middle between the wall and the domino line. Instead, I'm going to move the barrier closer to the domino line so it'll be a little bit more safe. Number 3, you accidentally built yourself into a corner. This one is actually kind of funny, but also not funny when you're building it and you realize this happened, because sometimes you just don't realize where you're setting up dominoes and you accidentally build it in a way that you can't get out, like you're trapped in your domino setup. This usually happens if you start building in the middle of your domino project, but then start working your way towards the walls. And at that point, the only thing you can do is like step over your domino project or unbuild dominoes at that point. Always keep in mind how you're building your domino project and where you start. It's always ideal to start building things in the back and then work your way towards the front. You just want to make sure at all times like you're looking around and see where you can place your foot so that you can get out of your domino setup if that's actually necessary. Number 4, you're not being light-footed around your dominoes. I think it goes without saying, but don't stomp around your dominoes, don't jump, don't run. You really honestly don't even want to walk normally around dominoes. You should really be stealthy and like very light on your feet, and make sure that whenever you're around the dominoes, you're not putting too much unnecessary weight by like slamming your foot into the ground. You really want to be as safe as possible, so be very delicate. And number 5, you forgot to fill in a safety gap. I do this like all the time still, and I know I really should like make a list and check it off so I know that I've completed the setup and there are no gaps. Safety gaps are so helpful when you're building it to prevent big knockdowns, but you need to remember to fill them in. So triple check your setup, do everything you can to make sure that it is all in place, you're good to go, and then topple it. I still do this all the time, and this was probably the most like commented mistake from my last video that people said that they did as well. So it happens to all of us, but hopefully those silly mistakes will help us learn in the future so we don't do them again. If there are any other mistakes that you've made when building your own domino projects, let me know in the comments in case I missed any. I think I'll probably make a part 3 of this video and turn this into a whole series, because I think it's actually really useful for domino builders to know what to look out for and how they can improve their setups and what to avoid so that they can make it a more flawless topple and have a better experience when they're building dominoes. Our featured community member is Paul Loves Dominoes, and I must give him some serious credit because he's been inventing some amazing new domino structures. Please go check out his channel and subscribe. And as always, I'm Lily Hevish, and keep on building.